Irfan on, it was like this parody on like the Fitbit, but it was called the Litbit, which helps you speak English better or something like that. And it was like this, it was for Hindi medium. It was a promotion for Hindi medium, and it did really well, and it like went completely viral. So I remember he was very happy about it, and we gone to the after party, and he was like standing on a table and like praising the team. And so, you see some crazy stuff there. I don't know how much of it I want to talk about on camera or once you stop rolling. So we met a lot of cool people.
Ashwin Suresh is the founder of Loco and Pocket Aces. After doing his engineering and working in investment banking in US, he came back to India and pivoted his career in the media industry, which led him to start Pocket Aces and eventually finding Loco as well. Welcome to So What's Next, Ashwin.
Thanks, bro. Good to be here.
Yeah. So actually, I'm very curious about your, entire career, which is what I want to start off with. It's basically about you started in engineering, after which you went into IB, which is like completely different again.
Yeah.
Then you did a diploma in film school. Then you came back, you worked in Reliance Entertainment, and then you started Pocket Aces in 2014.
Yeah.
So, dude, tell me the story. What's it?
Yeah, I mean, these things seemingly sound unconnected, but they're actually connected, right? I did engineering, and then I didn't know what job to do. I didn't think that I would be like really good at an engineering job. I didn't think I would be the smartest guy there. And banking had this allure. It felt very cool back in, this is 2000.
Plus, the money was there.
Yeah, well, I didn't know initially when I heard about banking that there would be a lot of money. If I had known that, it would have been an easier decision. But like 2006, 2007, it was cool to be in finance. It was like these, corporate traders and these private equity guys and these hedge funds and bankers. And we had all these books and movies that we'd watch. We'd read
like Wall Street, dude.
Wall Street is a movie.
Charlie Sheen.
Charlie Sheen's one. Yeah, I read a book called Monkey Business.
Okay.
We read a book about KKR called Barbarians at the Gate.
Yeah.
So all that stuff just felt cool, and like it felt cool to be like buying and selling companies. So I think a lot of it started with the coolness factor, which is a theme in my life because every career switch I've had is like, this sounds cool, let's do it. So that's how banking started. Banking was fun. I was actually surprisingly good at it. I quite enjoyed it.
Like you're an engineer, I think you actually the logical, analytical part of you helps you in banking.
Yeah, it definitely helps.
Yeah.
I mean, right?
That's why most engineers choose to be in finance eventually.
Yeah, it's also just a lot of money.
Yeah.
You get overworked and overpaid.
Yeah.
I wasn't complaining about either of those things, especially in my early 20s. And it was only because at some point after the financial crisis, banking, I'd moved to private equity by then, but it got kind of slow.
Yeah.
And I started to feel restless. We were talking just before the show about restlessness at that age. I felt like too much time was going by without being utilized effectively. And it was this weird thing because growing up, I was never that guy. I was the guy who would waste all the time I could. Like I was damn lazy. I was telling somebody today, somebody I'm encouraging to apply for an MBA abroad. And they were very worried. They're like, I don't think I'll have the right scores. I'm not good at taking exams. And I was explaining to them how I was not a great student.
Yeah.
I was a pretty average, maybe above average, but not a good student.
I have a question about laziness to you because I'm going through that personally as well.
What are you going through?
So I'm going through that. I'm 22, okay, and I'm feeling restless. But again, at the same time, I get if I'm doing something, I also get eventually very lazy at it. I don't want to get up, and I'm just I just.
Do you lose interest in stuff that you do?
Yeah. I think.
Yeah, man. I think it's normal, especially at 22. I think it used to happen to me a lot. I'd be half-hearted at everything. I would do something. I'd say I want to do this and I'd do it, but not.
But you're just doing it for the sake of it then. Yeah. So that's what I'm going through right now. And I actually wanted to ask you because you said it in one of your previous podcasts as well that you were lazy, but then eventually you're if you're building a company, you can't be lazy, right?
Yeah.
So then what was that?
I mean, that was a different phase though in my life, right? So in my 20s, I think what got me out of the laziness was the environment I was in. Because everybody around me was super ambitious, super hardworking, very keen on propelling their careers forward. And it felt criminal to not feel the same way. So it was almost peer pressure in some sense, although nobody was sitting and telling me work hard. But I just felt like I was in this environment where I didn't want to be the guy letting everyone else down.
Yeah.
And so that got me. And then I got used to the life. It was nice to be in banking, even though you worked your ass off. You got respect. When you told people you were a banker, people looked at that very favorably. Obviously, you got paid well. And it was only because in the crisis, I think 2009, 2010, when I was in private equity, things were very slow. Deal flow was limited. We were barely doing any deals.
It was recovering. So I think that's why you got maybe bored.
I got bored and I felt hey, what else can I do? And then again, I was what is the next cool thing? Yeah. And film seemed cool. It seemed like
2010.
Yeah, because if you remember 2007, 8, 9, Indian cinema went through this interesting transformation. Anurag Kashyap had just become a thing.
Yeah.
He had made a couple of those movies. There was this UTV Spot Boy. They had done like, Dibakar Banerjee's movies had come out. There were a couple of these guys, these filmmakers that had just different voices.
Yeah.
And it was like, hey, that's cool, man.
The 2010 highlight movie for me was
Delhi
My
Belly.
Name is Khan.
Oh, My Name is Khan.
Yeah. So that was like, dude, that was different. And I don't think people talk about it enough, right?
I mean, my 2010 highlight was Delhi Belly because I just could not believe that someone could make a movie like that and that Amir Khan would support it of all people, right? Like, because your idea of these actors were the conservative people.
And it's still like, people still watch it because there is no other movie made like that.
Yeah, it's terrific. I mean, the writer Akshat is a dear friend and I'm just always amazed that someone could put that out there, and I keep asking him, like, how did Amir Khan pick it up? Like, what happened?
Yeah.
Because it's an insane story.
Yeah.
And of course, I ended up doing a movie with Veer later on. So, Veer Das, and many years later.
Veer Das is also good.
Yeah, in that set, I used to ask him for stories all the time about this stuff because it was fascinating. So, for me, that was exciting. And I just thought that, this is so cool. Maybe I should spend some time trying to do it. But I was also somewhere scared that, hey, if I leave the US, how will I get back in? Because the whole point of life, you've been taught to move westward, not eastward.
Yeah.
Right? And your parents worked hard and found ways to send you to college and put hard-earned money behind that.
And right now, I think it's the cool thing to go abroad.
Yeah, it's also cool to come east now, which I think is a new phenomenon. But I'm talking about, the early
back then,
second half of the aughts, right?
True.
And it wasn't considered cool then. And so then I took my GMAT because I said, what, worst case, I'll come back for an MBA.
To India?
No, come back to the US.
Okay.
So I was thinking I'll go to India, try this film stuff out because it seems cool. But how will I get back to the US?
Yeah.
And I said, GMAT leke rakhte hain. Then it's a 5-year validity. So I'm like, 2 saal mein anyway, you'll fail in India and realize that yahan kuch nahi ho raha hai. And then you just apply for business school by 3rd year or 4th year, you're back, so your scores are valid and you're hit reset basically. Yeah. And that was the plan. So we did that. And I was also getting married around then. So Aditi and I just decided, fuck it, 2 years. Let's just see what it's like. She wanted to work in social development, like impact investing and kind of that side of the world.
What is ESG today right now, basically?
Making sustainable investments into sectors that are just not easy to attract investments, right? Like clean water, healthcare, sanitation, financial inclusion.
What Bill Gates is doing.
Yeah, kind of that stuff, but not as a donation or a grant. More as a way of generating returns from that. So she wanted to do that. I wanted to do this film thing. So we came to India. It was a 2-year experiment. We never lived in India. We grew up in the Middle East, both of us. Our parents were still in the Middle East. So we didn't have family or anyone here. So we just showed up and we said we'll figure out something. And I think that's what got us to kind of give, you can't be lazy when you take those steps because at that point you've staked your career on this.
Plus it was your late 20s, so
yeah, and you can't just fuck around for too long. You gotta get serious by then.
Society expects it from you to do something now.
Yeah, one is society. One is also I was newly married, so you have the pressure from the family, the in-laws. You can't be like damad kya karta hai, kuch nahi karta. Although I feel like jo log kuch nahi karte wo kamal karte hain, but at that point I can't reply to my father-in-law saying to kamal kar raha hu. So there's some pressure. Obviously, there's all of that stuff. In fact, and just before the show we were talking about what the folks, right? Some of this stuff is in the show because it was from my life that it felt so real to put it in that story, and I just felt that.
Which what made it people relate to it more.
Yeah, because I think other people have gone through it as well.
Yeah.
So then I wasn't lazy, and then of course I interviewed with a bunch of production houses, and I couldn't get too many meetings. Not a lot of people would meet me, but somebody at Reliance did, and they were kind enough to offer me I wouldn't call it a job because I was technically not on their payroll, but I was like a consultant type,
strategist type guy.
Yeah, it was almost like an internship, I would say, but it was like a full-time thing. They barely paid me anything, but they gave me so much exposure. They let me in everywhere. I was in every meeting. I was in top high-level discussions. So it didn't feel bad that they didn't pay me.
Yeah, because you were getting the network and everything there, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they paid me just about enough to cover most of my rent. I think I got 90% of my rent covered with that salary, and so it was fine. At least the main expense was almost completely taken care of. But they gave me so much exposure, and that's when I felt like I could dream bigger. Then I was like, dude, this seems like an easy job. I can do this. And I'm like, I can do this instead of doing it for an organization that's just large and slow. And I'm like, I was at maybe 27, 28. I was like, I can do this with full energy for myself. Of course, then from there, I went to Times of India. I set up Jungly Pictures over there with the same lady who had hired me at Reliance. That was another interesting experience. Once I did both of that, I felt confident that 2 years is up, but I can give this maybe 1 or 2 more years and try my own thing. If that doesn't work, I can still go back. Like, it's not the end of the world.
Like, you can always have that backup of going back.
That GMAT. I mean, it was a 5-year ticking clock, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, I took it in 2000, I want to say 2010, I think I took it.
So 2015, you had
I don't know if I took it in, I think maybe I took it in 8. I took it when the financial crisis hit because I was scared if I lose my job, I needed.
Oh, yeah.
I forget when I took it. I took it maybe in 08. So it was like I had till 2013 and it was about 2013 now, and I was like, should I start this company or whatever? And then I said, you know what? I talked to Aditi and she was like, listen, if you really want to do it, I'm having fun at my job. She was doing really well in that space. She had become quite senior in her organization. She was part of the decision-making team there. So we're like, you know what? Let's give this another shot. We'll figure out how to get back to the US. At some point, there'll be some path open. And that's how we started. So it was really like just a thing that we wanted to do. I didn't think at all that it would become as successful as it's become right now. And I don't think I planned for it. It's not...
Yeah, it was like very well like connected and dotted. But I actually also want to ask you that what are some things that you learned from all these experiences that kind of helped you in Pocket Aces as well? I
mean, look, on the strictly like tangible side, all of the skills that you pick up, right? Sales skills, analytical skills, understanding consumers, understanding products, understanding how to sell them, understanding how to finance these things, how to run financing programs for companies. Like that stuff is just the transferable direct skill. But more than anything, I think the career in finance gave me a lot of confidence as an individual. I was a rather underconfident guy before. I didn't think...
You're an engineer, so I mean, I wouldn't expect you to be confident.
I mean, true. Yeah. I was also not even like the quintessential engineer. I was not like academically that great. I was good, like
decent,
average, above average, something between average and above average. But I was not like, you go back to my high school, no one's going to be like, that guy was really good at academics. Yeah. He was okay. Yeah. I was not like failing or getting bad grades.
Which is a good resume to start off as an entrepreneur, right? Because like most of the entrepreneurs are usually not good at studying and academics.
Well, my 2 co-founders were really good at academics, so it's, I don't know.
I think I'm just giving myself.
And like so many IIT founders, right? So they must have been good at academics to get into IIT. But I think people are scared that if you have bad academics, you can't do any of these things. But like, I think it's fine. You end up at the same place through a different route.
Yeah.
So for me, those jobs gave me confidence. It gave me this weird, maybe even arrogance to think that I could do anything. That level of confidence.
Yeah, finance does that to you.
Yeah, you just felt like, dude, I've done that, so I know how to do any of this stuff. It also like made me just understand the value of working, like putting in time. Yeah. One is about hard work, and a lot of people work hard even if they work for limited periods. One is just sometimes it's the value of time. If you work 12, 18 hours a day, the 18 hours have value. And that really came into play at Pocket Aces because in the early days we used to work a lot, right? We were doing all the jobs at the company, and you couldn't do those in an 8-hour work day. So you'd have to work for 12, 16, 18 hours and whatever it demanded, right? The job demanded. That really set us apart. I felt like, I don't think, and maybe it's presumptuous for me to say this, but I don't think a lot of our competitors work that hard.
Yeah, no,
I saw a lot of them chill. I saw a lot of them kind of just like focus on being in the limelight. I saw a lot of them do it for the wrong reasons. But we put our head down. Like, you would not have even heard of us, especially of the founders at that time. Even today, we're not like popular figures for a reason. The company, you would have heard of the brands, you would have heard of Filter Copy and Dice Media and whatever, the shows we did, Little Things or whatever. But you would not have heard of the founders because we just wanted to focus on the job.
Plus, I think you all also set a precedent at that time that like, if you're the startup, you need to work like 18 hours or 16 hours in a day, you know? So that is
I mean, startups were doing it already.
Exactly.
I wouldn't say we were the first.
But
we certainly believe that it was
early stages, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. And like looking back now, what's the biggest achievement for you for Pocket Aces?
I think for Pocket Aces, the biggest achievement is creating a meaningful impact in the content ecosystem. I mean, the whole idea of like web series, like these are things we've been doing since 2015.
16, yeah.
Our first web series,
I started watching.
our first web series, Not Fit, came out in 2015.
Okay.
We were among the first few people in the country to pioneer the format, and today it's the
big thing,
very staple format. And the second thing is the amount of creators we've enabled, whether it's directors or actors or talent of other forms. Just the fact that they've all gone on to do really interesting things. That's like the biggest achievement.
That is also there. The biggest one that I've seen is that like in 2020, I think you all started like Netflix actually started publishing a lot of your work. like web series? And
In
all?
2018, we did Little Things season 2 is when they came on board. Yeah.
So I actually noticed that in like Little Things season 3, 2020, right, when it came out.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, that's so cool. You come from YouTube and then you're like on Netflix right now. So tell me that, like, how did you convince these guys to kind of, you know, take you on?
Dude, so that's actually an interesting story. So I told you, right, we had this arrogance that we could do anything.
Yeah.
So in 2016, before we made Little Things season 1, we actually pitched the show to Netflix. At the time, Netflix didn't have an office in India. They worked out of LA. And we pitched to the guy, we got his email address, and we didn't even find his, we tried different email addresses, you know, so like I'm not going to take his name, but let's say if it's Ashwin Suresh, right? Like we tried Ashwin at netflix.com, Ashwin.Suresh at netflix.com, Suresh at netflix.com. We tried all the combinations.
Okay.
One of them turned out to be the right one. And we pitched him Little Things. And because the other ones bounced back, right? And he looked at Little Things, he said, interesting idea, but, you know, we've seen YouTubers, and we told them these YouTube videos we did on Filter Copy, they scaled dramatically, 20 million views. These, you know, Mithila Palkar, Dhruv Sehgal, they're very popular now. He said, we've never seen YouTubers scale to like film and television, so we don't believe in the model. So we replied, we said, hey, look, that may be true for the US because it's a YouTuber's job there is very different. They're almost like creating non-fiction stuff. Our YouTubers are actually actors, many of them. So these guys are actors who are on YouTube because we can't get distribution on cable
Films
and
TV.
On cinema, because unlike the US, we don't have that depth and no one's buying the stuff. He said, no, I think we'll pass. And so we did the show anyway. We got advertisers to sponsor it. I think we broke even. I don't think we made a lot of money, but we didn't lose money. And obviously it went gangbusters, right? Like it had some 50 million views. Like it created
everyone
like this.
Loved it.
Yeah, I just created this like noise, and everyone was like, I remember like you couldn't go anywhere with Dhruv or Mithila. You couldn't have dinner, lunch anywhere at a public place because they would keep getting like mobbed. And then again, we didn't lose our audacity. We again pitched them into I think it was 2017. We went back and said, hey, listen, we've got a second season of this thing. This time you should come in. The numbers are so great. Look at it. And again, the guy at Netflix was like, listen, man, I don't think this is for us, but congrats on the success. Good for you. And then we again decided to work with brands and make it. And we were actually making the show. We had almost halfway through filming it. And my co-founder and I had gone to the US for a bunch of investor meetings. And one of our investors connected us to his friend who worked at Netflix in the communications department. We didn't know that guy at all, but that guy said, hey, look, you're so-and-so's friend. I'll take a meeting with you. So we happened to be, when we were in LA, he gave us some time. We met with him. He said, oh, you should totally meet my colleague X. He runs this international content for Netflix. We said, yeah, we've written to him many times. He's always rejected our shows.
Yeah.
So he doesn't like it. He's like, no. This time, you know what? Meet him in person. I'll arrange a meeting. But we were leaving LA that afternoon. So there was no way to actually meet him because no one's going to give you a meeting in an afternoon. So we said, you know what? It's a long shot. Fuck it. So we left LA, went back to San Fran, which is where we had more investor meetings. And 2 days later, we get an email from this guy saying, hey, I've set up your meeting. Can you be there on whatever Friday at 11 a.m.? And we're like, yeah, of course we can. And we're like, shit, now we have to fly back to LA. So we then got on a plane, went to LA, got this meeting. And this dude met us for the first time. And he said, hey, he's the guy we've been emailing. And he had a colleague who was hired just to focus on India and the Middle East. So she knew Indian content and she had watched the series.
Oh,
and he hadn't watched the series. She said, I watched the series. I love season 1. It is amazing. This is the kind of stuff I want to do. And we've only got one show in India right now, the Sacred Games, which is under production. And she said, we're considering greenlighting a second one called Ghoul, which is like a film that has been cut up into 3 parts. And we're going to just put it out there as a series. I would love this to be our 3rd show. And we couldn't believe ourselves because we had not prepared for that outcome. We had prepared to have to pitch them. And she said, so what's the budget for the show? How much are you expecting from us? And we had done no homework. So we looked at each other and we had not discussed what to say. So I just made up a number, which was several times higher than what I was spending on it.
Yeah.
But
don't tell me they gave you that number.
No, I feel like I pitched a low number because they agreed too quickly. And I was like, oh shit, I could have asked for more. And she was like, okay, we'll take a look. Can I watch the edits since you've already made the show? So we said, sure. Then we came back to India, worked ultra fast on the edits. I got my team like all day, all night. This is all we have to do. So we spent like 18 hours a day just getting the damn edits. My editor, Soumya, and I, we just sat and got it done and sent it to them. And they loved it. And they're like, this is it. This is the show we want to make. And they paid us a bomb for it, which we were so like proud of because it was like the first large ticket deal for Pocket Aces.
Yeah. And I think for Indian web series as well, right?
Yeah, because nobody had done a series that went from YouTube to Netflix.
Exactly.
And of course, there were series in India because by then Amazon had done a couple of shows. Netflix was just launching Sacred Games. So the language was starting to get understood. What Netflix did for the show was, obviously the viewership on YouTube was much larger.
Yeah.
But Netflix gave it credibility.
Yeah.
It suddenly showed up on billboards and suddenly people in the industry had heard about it. So I had all these filmmakers and writers and directors who knew about it. And when they realized I was a showrunner or that we were the makers of it, we got a bunch of respect in the industry.
Yeah,
which
no,
I think
that's true. Like, obviously anything that is coming on Netflix has like a good credibility comparing to YouTube, because which is like a bunch of, random things on YouTube, right? Netflix like chooses its content.
Yeah, anybody can put up content on YouTube, but Netflix chooses its content. So that really helped. It was
and tell me about, like you mentioned earlier, right, that about we were talking about Viraj and how people from Filter Copy, Dice Media and all these like creators that you had have eventually like done well in life.
Yeah.
So what I didn't understand how, but there's obviously a connect from where they've come and from where they are right now. So like tell me about that.
Yeah, this isn't a new phenomenon, right? If you look at many organizations that have prioritized excellence and have created a process. So it's not just random excellence. I just brought some 10 smart people together and some magic happened.
Yeah.
But I created an institutional process to deliver a quality of performance or certain excellence. Alums of those organizations have gone on to build even bigger and better things outside of that. So this isn't new. And so we've always focused, especially at Pocket Aces in the early days, on creating a process that's replicatable, because we didn't want something that depended on any of the founders to succeed. If the founders were not involved or were unavailable, we still wanted this stuff to be equally successful. And I think that, so whether it is like you brought up Viraj's name, when Viraj joined, he was still completing, I think he was in college still, he hadn't completed college. He would part-time, like he was working 3 days a week and he would go to college, I think, a couple times. It wasn't just like, hey, Viraj, come create some funny content. In fact, I'd argue that Viraj wasn't that funny in the beginning, but it was a process that we all collectively created, not just, the founders or management, like all of us, including Viraj and the creators. We created a process and we kept improving the process. We'd try things, they wouldn't work, we'd improve them, they'd work, we'd do more of what works and less of what doesn't work. And then everybody learned that, because for 2-3 years, we went from not being in the scene at all to being one of the largest YouTube channels in the scene, right? Yeah. And that rigor and that time spent, I said, no, you have to spend those 16-18 hours a day. That time that everybody spent, we'd literally all be in the office all the time. We'd all come in, spend the whole day working. After that, we'd all go to beer cafe or somewhere and sit and continue to talk about work and drink beer. So you were just hanging out. These people were like your friends, your colleagues, your family, your everything. And so just spending all that time, everybody like learned those processes, and it makes me really like happy to see these guys go out and do their own things as independent creators, or, and it's not just the, the on-camera talent, even people behind the scenes like our DOPs or editors or directors all go on to have successful careers after that.
Yeah, and I think that's the same thing that you're following in Loco as well, right? Because I was just speaking to my friend. She told me that there's this creator who's on Loco as well, and she's like, because of streaming, she's earning a lot, and like she's like getting a lot of followers and stuff.
Yeah.
So is that the same thing that you followed on Loco?
Yeah, to some degree, yeah. I think we're trying to create the environment where people can grow their communities, right? I think ultimately, why would a creator come to Loco? They only come to Loco if, of course, if there's some financial motive to do so, but also if you're creating a path for them to grow. Like, why do you put your podcast out on YouTube or Instagram, right? You do it because they give you audiences, they give you a way to grow. And so we think of ourselves in that same manner as a platform that has to allow people to grow. And so, again, when I see these, game streamers, like they went from earning very little 2 years back to earning a lot today.
Yeah.
They're all buying nice houses and nice cars. And, in some sense, it's good that they're all growing and doing well. In some sense, I also feel like a lot of young people don't know what to do when they get a lot of money very early.
But I think they learn. Like,
yeah, hopefully.
You have to learn. It's like that.
Yeah, because when down markets happen, like the one we're in right now, then the pinch is real, and a lot of people have gone and blown that money on some like fancy vehicle or crazy watch or
This comes from US actually. Like if you see most of the rappers and all that, they earn their first paycheck and they just spend it on like buying a house for their moms or something.
I mean, a house I think is fine because it's the property value like can sustain, but like when you buy a fancy watch or fancy pair of sneakers, like people are buying 20 lakh sneakers, then I'm like, dude, like what if you don't get more money after this? What if the market dies? What if your own following changes?
Do you take money off from their donations? Like the donations that they get through streaming?
So
do you take a cut of it?
Yeah, as a platform, there's obviously some amount of that we take, just like YouTube or any other platform does. But honestly, that's not the primary source of revenue.
No, obviously,
for them. For them,
it's just like an interesting thought that we had. Like we've seen like people donating money right online. We're like, dude, how does this platform earn through that? Like, do they actually cut?
The platforms take a piece of it, right?
They
like even on your it's not just the donations, right? Even like ad share. So if you run a video on YouTube and there's an ad that plays in the middle, YouTube takes 45%.
So that's essentially the business model that you've adopted from YouTube. But this is especially for
and there are we don't have like one business model. We have multiple business models. So for some creators, it's like a fixed payment we give them. Some people, it's like more dependent on the performance. In some cases revenue will be shared, in some cases will not. So there's a bunch of different models. Really which one works depends on which one.
And you're still like experimenting, or you have like set now?
No, we're still experimenting. On Loco is very early, right? We're just working on
I mean, it's been 5 years actually, but like, and I know you all started out as a quiz company.
Like, that's right.
I remember the IPL ad that came out. So tell me that how did like from Pocket Aces to like Loco completely different?
I mean, it started off, you kind of touched upon it, right? It started off as a quiz app, and it was just a different form of content for us.
And now it's like gaming and streaming.
Now it's esports and game streaming.
So then what's the story behind it?
When it started off as a quiz app, and it felt like another genre of content, right? Like you made shows, you made short sketches, you made food videos, and you did like quizzing and Bollywood and cricket trivia shows, right? So it was like, it felt like a fourth pillar, except that it had its own app and its own website or whatever. I think it was around 2019 when we realized the opportunity in esports and gaming was going to be huge, because we saw what was happening with PUBG and Free Fire and all these games, and we just felt that someone's got to build a platform where this community can come together, consume content together, engage with each other, find the creators that they love, because YouTube was too general. It still is too general.
It is
right?
still,
Discovery is hard. People can't grow that fast on YouTube. Even today, people grow almost 2x the speed on Loco than they grow on YouTube. It's just not designed for...
It's not feasible right now,
so that's why we felt there was an opportunity worth pivoting into, and I think we picked the right time, because we launched just around the lockdown, and then the lockdown streaming really took off.
It was crazy. Like we were just talking about that we survived the lockdown because of watching Tanmay Bhatt and his streaming PUBG videos.
Yeah, that's right. He was doing a lot of that.
So we didn't know of Loco back then. Like we didn't use it back then, but so it was like streaming really took off then, and we saw people making a lot of money off streaming, and now it's like become a viable career.
I mean, it also became like a behavior, right? Like if you remember that time, birthday parties were on Zoom calls. That's a live stream ultimately. People's funerals were being done on Zoom calls. Pujas were being done like that. Like everything. So the circle of life, from like life to death, was happening on live stream. So that behavior just became so normalized in our society. And putting oneself on camera and being live on camera just became a normal
thing.
That really, and it's a permanent change. I don't think we're going to go back to a version of society where we're embarrassed to be on camera or shy. We're now very camera friendly.
I mean, I was, but now even I've become, because
you go to any tourist destination, the number of people are like running a vlog real time there, and it's just too much.
It's crazy. You've built like 2 successful business now. Like one is Pocket Aces, one is like Loco. You have to have like some cool stories to tell me. Like who have you met or what has happened to you after building, like after 10 years of being an entrepreneur. So like tell me 3 stories like that.
Oh God, that's gonna be hard to remember now, but. When I'm put on the spot, the memories disappear suddenly.
Take your time.
We've met. Look, I think just Pocket Aces being in the film business, we've met a lot of people that are kind of deeply embedded in the film world, right? So whether it's actors or directors or whatever, we've met several of them. We've had the fortune of working with many of them, especially because there was a point in time where every film's marketing campaign had a filter copy video as part of the plan. It was
I remember, man, and I was like thinking, I was in 10th grade, I think, at that time, and I was just thinking on my mind, I'm like, how are they getting these like cool people and all?
Yeah, and from Shah Rukh to Akshay Kumar to Sonakshi Sinha to everybody, Irfan, we'd all everyone had done a collab. I think Varun Dhawan, everybody. So in that phase, of course, we met a lot of
people,
actors, a lot of cool collabs were done. We did some cool videos, and a lot of these guys would often think of this as just like a marketing sketch, like a comedy thing. And so we could get away with a lot of like irreverent content, something like, we did this one video with Irfan on, it's like this parody on like the Fitbit, but it was called the Lit Bit, which helps you speak English better or something like that. And it was like this, it was for Hindi medium. It was a promotion for Hindi medium, and it did really well, and it like went completely viral. So I remember he was very happy about it, and we gone to the after party, and he was like standing on a table and like praising the team. And so, you see some crazy stuff there. I don't know how much of it I want to talk about on camera or once you stop rolling. So we met a lot of cool people. So it was one time before Pocket Aces had started creating digital content, we were trying to, put movies together. And somebody had introduced us to Jackie Shroff. And he's a crazy guy. He's a crazy guy. He's insane fun. And Jackie had said, why don't you guys come meet me? I'm shooting something in Mehboob. Meet me there, and then we can talk. And we wanted to pitch a movie to him, which was a remake of a Tamil film that he had only acted in. He had actually acted in a Tamil film. I don't know if you know this.
We don't know this.
And this was a remake, and we wanted him to play the same part in Hindi. And somebody who had introduced us to him had told him that these guys come from the finance world, and they're now making films. In his head, I think he assumed that to mean they are financial guys, meaning they'll bring money in. So he saw us as money bags. And so anyway, we go to Mehboob Studios. He meets us there. It's really, he's like, and he's actually in a car. He's not like standing. He's like sitting in a car on his way out. He's like, "Bache log, aaja mere saath." So I had my car and driver there as well. So I tell my driver, "You just follow us." So we get into his SUV and we drive, and he follows us, my driver. And that was one of the most insane nights. It was like a hangover movie. For the next 8 hours, we were with him. And we went from one place to another, having adventure after adventure. I don't know how much of this I can narrate on camera. But it was a wild night where both of us looked at each other. We're like, is this real? Like, are these characters real? We ended up at like one seafood festival where other celebrities were there. We ended up distributing Parle G to poor beggars on the road. We ended up ordering alcohol through a moving car to get delivered somewhere. Somehow the communication happened where alcohol showed up at a place. We ended up at a guy's house which was the size of this recording studio, except when you opened one door, there was one room that was bigger than this entire floor plan. It was a bizarre night where we just didn't know what was going on.
So is it safe to say, like, if you want to party, then party with Jackie Shroff?
He was like the nicest guy. He was the warmest guy. He didn't drink a drop of alcohol. He was just like, he was making sure we were happy and satisfied and drunk enough. And he was telling us stories. He was introducing us as his like long lost friends to people. I don't know what like prompted that night to take place the way it did, but it was one of the wildest nights of my life I've had. And many times friends who know the full details of the story have told us we should make a movie on it.
Yeah, you should.
Because that one night is like a hangover movie.
Like it's like a hangover movie, dude.
And like crazy shit has happened. Like I've not even touched the surface here. But at some point maybe we'll write that story and
you should
make it. It was nuts. So that's one story. 3 is a lot, bro.
Give me one more. You give one from Bollywood, give me one from cricket.
Well, cricket stories, I have a lot of cricket stories, but nothing from my work. So I follow the World Cup team everywhere. Oh, I'll tell you a really cool cricket story. 2015.
World Cup.
Yeah, the World Cup. I mentioned to you earlier, I torn a ligament.
Yeah.
But I still had to go to Australia. I was like, I'm not going to miss this. And we had tickets to India, Pakistan in Adelaide. So I'm wearing a brace, and me and a bunch of friends, we've all gathered together. The same friends I watch cricket with a lot. So half of them are from the US, some from Europe, one from Switzerland, some from France, whatever. Like, we're all from different places. We gathered together in Adelaide. And the night before the match, there's like one main street in Adelaide where all the restaurants are, a bunch of bars and stuff. And all the local Indians and Pakistanis are driving around in their cars with their flags. So the Indians are driving around in their cars top down or windows down with the Indian flags. The Pakis are doing the same thing. And it's just like this build up for the game, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's like hyped up. People are carrying like pictures and
like
posters.
Before we beat them, right?
Well, we didn't know we were going to beat them, right? We felt confident. So it was like wild, right? So we hype up. And remember, I just told you a story earlier off camera when I was at the 2007 World Cup where we lost to Bangladesh. So I was not like supremely confident or anything. So I was just like, let's hope we win. We get to the stadium the next day, game happens. I think Kohli played a scintillating innings. It was a terrific game, and we were just like really on top, right? And I think about halfway into the second innings, it was a done deal. Like it was a very low probability that Pakistan was going to pull it off. And if you looked at the stands, it was beautiful. I have a nice picture of like the sunset in the background and the stand. It was just so gorgeous. But like the stands were also divided by fans. So it's like this was the blue area, that was the green area. So you could see a sea of green when you looked at where the Pakistani supporters were sitting. So when we felt very confident that we're going to win this, me and my friends were wearing India jerseys painted with our India colors on our face and everything. We said, all right, let's go sit in the middle of the Pakistani stand. Let's just go sit smack in the middle. So the 5 of us got up. We walked over, because a lot of Pakistanis had left by then because they were like, what the fuck, right? So we went and sat in the middle. So there's a sea of green and 5 blue dots with orange and whatever the colors on our faces. And we're sitting there and like, it's funny because you're listening to when Indian players play badly, or like, when someone does badly, like, ad करता रहता है साला, उसको निकाल दो सारे ad से, fine कर दो उसको, team से निकाल दो, cricket से ban कर दो. That's the kind of stuff we say. They were upset at like Misbah and all these other players. They were like, गोली मार दो उसको, उड़ा दो उसको, फांसी चढ़ा दो उसको. I'm like, bro, like this is a different level of like.
Yeah. They're like very frustrated at that point of time.
I mean, our frustration is like, okay, financially hurt the guy, or let him not play cricket again. Theirs is like to destroy him, right? And we were sitting over there like, okay, what are we doing sitting here? This is now starting to be scary.
What's the most memorable chant that you've heard at a cricket stadium?
I'm not gonna say it on camera, dude. I'll tell you off camera though. There are a few of them actually.
I have one. I was 7 years old. The first time I heard Gali was not like from my...
What was it?
It was like India-Australia game, Wankhede. I was with my father, with his friend and one of his sons, So the chant was... banaya, bada maza aaya. So I was there. I was 7 years old. So, I was like, everyone's saying it. It's like,
cool,
so I'll say it. And I'm 7 and I'm saying that chant.
The one that I heard a lot in Sharjah growing up watching cricket in Sharjah was 1, 2, 3, 4, Pakistan ki whatever maar, right? So, there were many of these sayings. But and the best part of this, I have a video on my phone, is after the game, we all went and stood next to the exit of the stadium where you have to walk past. The players had to walk past to get to their bus. And the Pakistani players were... because A, the Indians are celebrating and making it bad. B, the Pakistani supporters are booing them. So they're just walking like no support. Because like the Indian guys, at least the Pakistanis are booing them, but the Indians are like, yeah, good job, right? Like, good job, Kohli, good job, Rohit, whatever. Here... they're getting screwed by both sides. So they were not enjoying it. And it's like you can see all of them, they're just hiding their faces, just covering their face, putting on headphones and walking past. So it was quite nuts that day. I remember it so vividly. And then of course that night we went back to that street where all the cars, and it was like silence. It was just the Indian guys, loud Punjabi music playing, like Indian flags everywhere. The Pakistanis were nowhere to be seen. They're all retreated to their homes.
Like, do you think after being an entrepreneur, like a successful entrepreneur to that, you have like many good stories to tell?
Yeah, I have a ton of stories, man. Like, I could spend hours telling you stories.
You should capture it on like camera and like make a series or something out of it.
Put it into my memoir just and then release it just at my deathbed so they can't sue me for
it. Like do a thing with Pocket Aces, like maybe filter copy something, like, but just make some videos off of it so at least like some people,
so many stories,
people man. Like me can like watch that and have fun, dude.
No, we fortunately I think that's also it's also good fortune, right? To be able to have so many memories of crazy situations happening, like
so like that is one, but also the ability to remember those stories, like
with that ability is fading with age, man. Like every year I remember less.
How old are you? 14?
Not yet, but not too far from that.
I would want to be like you in your position at that age. I wouldn't lie.
Thank you. Well, let's hope it feels better on your body than it does on mine.
I hope. Okay, thank you so much for doing this, man. Happy I had a fun time with you.
Me too.
I'll be very honest.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We should catch up again. Good to meet you. Thank you. Thanks, guys.